The sky was the kind of dull gray that matched the silence in the funeral home, the kind that didn't rain but made everything feel damp. I stood near the back, hands folded, listening to the minister speak about closure and peace. There was no peace in my chest, only a hollow ache that hadn't settled since I got the call. Jenna had been my best friend since I was 13, the kind of friendship that saw me through college rejections, my first apartment, and the slow unraveling of my family's interest in my life. She was the one who remembered my favorite tea when I got sick, who knew when to speak and when to just sit with me in the quiet. Now she was gone, and I was expected to carry on like I hadn't just lost the person who'd always made space for me when no one else did. The ride back home was silent. I didn't bother with music. I didn't need anything distracting me from the numb weight sitting in my chest. As I turned onto my street, I imagined curling up on the worn blue armchair in my room, the one piece of furniture that had followed me from college to adulthood. Maybe I'd reread one of Jenna's old letters. Maybe I'd finally let myself cry. My family wasn't big on emotion. We didn't talk about things, not really. They tolerated my quietness like it was a phase I'd grow out of. I was the sensitive one, the one who cried too easily and held on too long. Still, they weren't cruel, just elsewhere, preoccupied with things that didn't include me. I pulled up to the curb in front of our house, my house technically, though it had never felt like mine, and blinked at the sight in front of me. Black trash bags, cardboard boxes, a lamp with the shade dented in, my suitcase, the green one with the broken zipper, lying sideways on the grass. I parked the car slowly, got out even slower. The ache in my chest expanded into confusion. What the hell was all of my stuff doing outside? At first, I thought maybe there had been a fire. That was the only thing that made sense. I scanned the house for signs of smoke damage, broken windows, anything to explain why every piece of my life was now sitting on the curb like oversized garbage. The windows were intact. The lawn was mowed. No caution tape, no blackened walls, just a neat line of boxes, bags, and scattered memories. I walked closer, numb. The rain that had been threatening all day finally started. A fine mist soaking into the cardboard, curling the edges of photos I hadn't seen in years. My copy of The Secret History lay face down in the wet grass, pages fanned open like a drowned bird. That's when it hit me. This wasn't an emergency. This was intentional. My box of art supplies had been dumped upside down, paint tubes cracked open like broken teeth. The stack of letters from Jenna, tied with a purple ribbon, now sat waterlogged next to a smashed mug that once said, "Introverts Unite," separately. A neighbor from 2 doors down walked by with her dog, eyes flicking toward the mess, then quickly away. Not a word, not a wave, just a tightening of her grip on the leash. I grabbed my phone and called my mother, straight to voicemail. I texted my father, me. "What's going on? Why is all my stuff outside?" No response. I checked the family group chat. I wasn't in it anymore. A flash of cold moved down my spine that had nothing to do with the weather. I picked up a box marked Avery's room. The handwriting was my sister's, and opened it to find clothes tossed in without folding, a pair of shoes crushed under a stack of notebooks. My heart pounded as I looked up at the house. The curtains were drawn. The door was closed. And I realized with a slow, sickening certainty that my family had moved. Without telling me. They hadn't just left, they'd left me. And they hadn't even bothered to take my things with them. Just left them there. For the street, for the rain, for whoever passed by to see that I didn't matter enough to take with. I sat on the curb next to my half-dissolved life, thumbs moving over my phone like I was trying to summon answers through sheer persistence. Me. Where are you? Me. Why didn't you tell me? Me. Are you coming back? I called my mom again, straight to voicemail. I left a message this time, my voice tight but steady. "Hi, it's me. I'm at the house, or what's left of it, apparently. Can you call me back?" No response. I tried my dad next, then my sister, then the group chat, even though I already knew I wasn't in it anymore. I searched their social media pages. Mom had changed her profile picture to a beach photo, somewhere sunny. My sister had posted a selfie in what looked like a new kitchen, white countertops and staged lemons in a bowl. No caption. Just emojis, I commented. Avery, where is this? The comment disappeared within minutes. Deleted. Not blocked. Yet. Just ignored. The rain was steady now, soaking into my jeans, dripping from my hair. Still, I sat there, waiting, hoping that this was some twisted misunderstanding, that maybe someone would come back with an explanation. No one did. A few more neighbors walked past, Mrs. Kendrick with her ever-present tote bag, the college kid from the next block who always wore earbuds. Not one of them made eye contact. Not one of them asked if I was okay. Finally, Mr. Holloway from across the street came out to check his mailbox. I stood up fast, my voice catching as I called out, "Do you know what happened?" He paused, mailbox still open, eyes flicking to the curb. They moved. When? Last weekend, he said, squinting like this conversation was inconvenient for him. Big truck. Whole family packed up and left. Thought you were already gone. I opened my mouth, but no sound came. I guess they didn't mention it to you. He gave a shrug. Like that explained everything. Sorry, kid. He turned and went back inside. I stared after him for a long moment before looking back at the pile of wet cardboard and broken furniture. It hadn't been a mistake. This wasn't sudden. They'd planned this, packed up, moved on, and decided I wasn't worth telling. The leasing office was just a few blocks away. Brick building, gold lettering, fake ferns in the lobby. I walked in with rain-soaked sleeves and dirt on my shoes. The receptionist gave me a look like I didn't belong there. I didn't correct her. I need to speak to whoever handles the lease for 2140 Westwood Drive, I said, voice calm, even though my chest felt like it was trying to fold in on itself. She typed something, looked confused, then picked up the phone. A few minutes later, a man in a navy sweater and khakis stepped into the lobby, middle-aged, too tan for October. Can I help you? I'm Avery. I lived at Westwood Drive. My family... I paused. They're gone. No one told me. He frowned. Oh, right. The Harrisons. That's us. I thought you already moved out, he said, glancing at the receptionist like she might confirm it. Your parents terminated the lease last Friday, paid the early exit fee and everything. I didn't move out, I said evenly. I was at a funeral. I came back to find my stuff on the curb. His brow furrowed. Your name wasn't on the lease, just Richard and Marlene. I've lived there for 6 years. I understand, but from a legal standpoint, he shifted uncomfortably. If you weren't listed as a tenant, there's not much we can do. So you just let them leave my things out like garbage? They said you'd already moved out, that you were staying somewhere else. I stared at him, trying to process it. They lied. I'm really sorry, he said. The kind of sorry people say when they're not actually sorry. If you need to file a complaint, there's a number for tenant services. I'm not a tenant, I snapped, the truth cutting harder than it should have. Remember? He looked away. I turned and walked out without another word. The automatic doors opened too slowly, like even the building wanted to hold me there a moment longer, as if to say you don't belong anywhere anymore. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the street felt different now. Colder. Like everything that had once been mine had already decided I was no longer part of it. By the time I got back to the pile, the rain had soaked through everything. The smell was stronger now, damp cardboard, mildew, something sharp like rotting plastic. I crouched beside a box that had once lived in the back of my closet. Mold crept along the edges. Inside, sweaters had fused together into one heavy, dripping lump. My books were warped and peeling, furniture scratched, splintered, legs broken off, but it wasn't just the damage. It was what was missing that twisted the knife. The photo albums, gone. 3 of them, each one hand-labeled in my slanted cursive. One was from high school, with Jenna's notes scribbled in the margins. Another from college. The third just moments. Family trips. Candid smiles. People who used to mean something. Not there. Neither was the little leather-bound journal I'd kept since I was 16. I'd tucked it behind my bookshelf, thinking no one would ever bother with it. Pages filled with poetry, letters I never sent, the mess of growing up when no one around you understands what you're becoming. Also gone, my grandmother's necklace, a delicate silver chain with a small opal, just barely the size of a raindrop. She gave it to me when I turned 13, said it belonged to the women in our family who didn't quite fit. I never wore it, not because I didn't love it, but because it felt sacred. It stayed in a small velvet pouch in the top drawer of my desk. Not anymore. I stood up slowly, heart thudding against my ribs. They hadn't just tossed out my belongings. They'd picked through them. They'd taken the things with value, not the kind you sell, but the kind that leaves a mark when it's missing, the kind that anchors you to your own life. They took my memories and left the garbage. A lamp with a shattered base, a cracked mug, a stained mattress they didn't even bother to cover. They made choices, not mistakes, not forgetfulness, choices. And for the first time, I didn't feel sad. I felt furious. The kind of quiet, bone-deep rage that settles beneath your skin and whispers, this was never about space or convenience. It was about erasing me. I sat on the curb, my legs numb, my phone cold in my hand. I hadn't eaten, I hadn't slept, but I needed to know. I opened Instagram, scrolled past my mother's beach photos, my sister's curated kitchen tour. No sign of a move, no announcement, just the polished version of life they wanted the world to see. I searched for the family group chat, the one titled Fam Bam Heart. Gone, not archived, not muted, just gone. I texted my cousin Talia, the only one in the extended family who still sent me birthday messages and tagged me in old photos for the memories. Me. Did they make a new group chat? She responded almost instantly. Talia. Yeah, I didn't realize they didn't add you. Me. Can you send me a screenshot? She hesitated. I saw the typing bubble disappear, then reappear. Finally, the screenshot came through. The conversation was from a week ago. Mom, everything's packed. Truck comes Friday. Dad, Avery still hasn't asked about the move. Classic. Sister, don't start, she'll make it a whole thing. Mom, she always does. Drama, guilt, tears. I'm done. Dad, this will be better for everyone. Clean break. Sister, holding us back for years. I stared at the screen, rereading the words until the letters blurred. Drama. Guilt. Holding us back. Like I was a burden they'd carried too long. Like I wasn't a person, but dead weight they finally decided to cut loose. Not one of them questioned whether it was right, whether I was okay, whether I'd have somewhere to go. Just silence. Then cold efficiency. I felt my throat close, the sting behind my eyes sharpening like needles. I swallowed hard. Not here. Not in front of this box of ruined clothes. Not when the only thing I had left was the ability to not break where they could see it. I saved the screenshot, forwarded it to my backup email, the one I kept for things that mattered. They had rewritten the story before I even had a chance to speak. But the receipts, they were mine now, and I planned to keep everyone. It didn't start with the boxes on the curb. It started long before that, in the moments I used to shrug off the conversations that left me hollow, the silence that stretched between us like an unspoken rule. The first fracture came when I turned down the accounting job my dad lined up after college. Marketing isn't a real career, he said, disappointment barely concealed. You're wasting your degree. I told him I wanted something creative. He told me creativity didn't pay bills. Later came the arguments about money. I wasn't asking for help, just space, a chance to build something without being watched, judged, measured. But every holiday turned into a financial intervention. You're not where you should be at your age, my sister said once, after asking how much I made. Maybe if you weren't always changing jobs. They never understood why the 9-to-5 life made me feel like I was drowning, or why I disappeared into books and notebooks when the world got too loud. They called it laziness. I called it survival. The year I finally got a diagnosis, generalized anxiety with panic features, I told my mom. Thought maybe she'd soften. Instead, she said, "Don't label yourself. You just need to toughen up." Toughen up, as if I hadn't been doing that my whole life. There were family dinners where my silence was called moodiness, skipped birthdays because I couldn't fake the smile long enough. Every time I tried to explain, I was met with rolled eyes or changing subjects. You make everything about you. You're so sensitive. You hold on to things too long. I started shrinking myself to make them more comfortable, agreeing when I didn't want to, laughing at jokes that stung, telling them what they wanted to hear. But it was never enough. I thought keeping the peace would save me a seat at the table. Turns out they were building a new table and leaving me off the guest list entirely. So no, this didn't start with a moving truck. It started years ago, with every version of me they refused to accept. Maya pulled up in a dented white van with a bumper sticker that said, "Empathy is badass." She stepped out wearing leggings and a paint-stained hoodie, her dark curls piled into a messy bun. The sight of her hit me harder than I expected. "I brought snacks," she said, holding up a bag of pretzels and 2 warm Gatorades. "And muscle. Let's get your life off this curb before the city sends a truck." She didn't ask what happened right away, just started loading boxes into the van, moving with the kind of quiet focus that made everything feel slightly less surreal. It wasn't until we shoved the last moldy bag into the back seat that she turned to me. "So, they really just left?" I nodded, swallowing around the knot in my throat. "Damn." That was all she said. No lecture, no probing questions, just damn like she understood there were no right words. We drove to her apartment on the east side, 3rd floor, no elevator. We carried everything up ourselves, 2 boxes at a time, until my arms felt like they might snap. She cleared a space on her couch and handed me a blanket that smelled like lavender dryer sheets and old hope. "Stay as long as you need," she said. I nodded again, not trusting my voice. Later that night, after we picked through what was salvageable and dumped the rest, Maya made us grilled cheese and soup. I took one bite and finally broke. Tears slid down my face, silent and hot, landing on the edge of the plate. "I don't think they ever loved me," I whispered. She didn't argue, didn't try to convince me otherwise. Just reached out and squeezed my hand. "They chose this," I said. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't something they forgot to tell me. They planned it. They wanted me gone. Maya nodded slowly. "Then it's their loss." I wiped my face with the sleeve of my hoodie and took another bite of grilled cheese. For the first time since coming home to find myself abandoned on the street, I didn't feel crazy. I felt seen, and maybe that was the start of healing. Being somewhere I didn't have to explain myself to be allowed to stay. I wasn't looking for their new address. It found me. Talia posted a photo on her story, a group shot at what looked like a housewarming. My mom was front and center, holding a glass of white wine. My dad stood beside her, grinning. My sister's new kitchen made another appearance, but this time there was a caption. "Congrats on the new place, Harrisons. House Sparkle." The location tag gave it away. I clicked. Subdivision name, full address. They hadn't moved far, 30 minutes across town, close enough to visit, far enough to disappear. Maya drove me, silent the whole way. She didn't ask what I was hoping for. Neither did I. Their new neighborhood had identical houses in polite rows, every lawn trimmed, every driveway empty like the world had been paused. I walked up the path and knocked. It took longer than expected. The door opened. My mom stood there in a crisp white blouse, hair curled, expression blank. Avery. That was it. No hug, no apology. Just my name, like it had become something she barely recognized. "I need to talk to you," I said. "We're in the middle of something." "You moved without telling me." Her mouth tightened. "We didn't think you'd want to come." I blinked. So you decided for me? It's better this way, she said, her voice flat. Cleaner. Cleaner. My voice cracked. I came home from a funeral to find my life on the curb. My dad appeared behind her, arms crossed. You were never on the lease, Avery. You were staying temporarily. 12 years is temporary. He didn't flinch. Then I saw them. My sister, hovering behind him, looking away, and beside her, my younger brother, Jamie. He looked older than I remembered, taller. His eyes met mine, wide and uncertain. Jamie, I whispered. His gaze dropped to the floor. He didn't say a word. My chest caved in. Mom stepped back, inching the door closed. You should go. I didn't move. You don't belong here anymore. The door clicked shut before I could answer. I stood there on their pretty new porch, heart thudding behind my ribs. They'd rebuilt a life, and made damn sure I wasn't part of it. The lawyer's office was sterile, like someone had ordered peace and quiet in bulk. A wall of law books, fake plant in the corner, soft music that didn't match the knot in my stomach. Maya sat beside me, legs crossed, thumb tapping against her knee. The lawyer, Ms. Renshaw, was brisk, not unkind, but efficient in the way people are when they've seen worse. I just want to know what I can do, I said. They moved without notice, dumped my belongings, took things that were mine. She glanced through the file I brought, a folder of photos, text messages, the screenshot of the group chat. You lived there how long? 12 years. But your name wasn't on the lease? No mail address to you? No utilities in your name? I hesitated. It was always easier to just let them handle that stuff. She nodded slowly. Legally, that makes this difficult. You were, in the eyes of the law, a guest, not a tenant. A guest? The word made me feel small, like I'd overstayed a welcome I didn't know had an expiration date. And the items they removed, any receipts or proof of ownership? Some, but the sentimental things, no. The necklace, journals, letters. I understand. Her tone softened slightly, but those are hard to recover through legal channels. If you can't prove financial value, courts often don't pursue it. So that's it, I said. They get to pretend I was never there? It's not fair, she said, but it's how the law is written. I stared at the contract for a moment. Something inside me twisted, not anger this time, but a strange, echoing hollowness. They erased me, I said, legally, emotionally, physically, like I never existed in that house. Maya reached over, rested her hand on mine. No words, just presence. I thought about the photo albums they kept, the necklace, the fact that in every way that could be documented or defended, I'd been invisible. No lease, no name, no trace. The lawyer gave me a list of possible small claims options, a few next steps that wouldn't lead anywhere meaningful. As we left, Maya handed me back my folder. You don't need paperwork to prove you were real, she said. But I couldn't help feeling like a ghost no one had bothered to bury. Out of everything they took, only one thing kept me up at night: the box. A small carved wooden box with brass hinges and a tiny lock that clicked shut with a satisfying snap. My grandmother had given it to me on my 25th birthday. She hadn't told me what was inside, only that it was mine, and that I'd know when it was time to open it. For when the world tries to make you small, she'd said, slipping the key into my palm, this will remind you who you are. I'd kept it hidden in the back of my desk drawer, behind old notebooks and expired printer ink. It wasn't flashy, not valuable to anyone else, but it had weight. Not just the kind you feel in your hands, but the kind that pulls at you from the inside. Memory weight, legacy weight. When Maya and I had sorted through the boxes from the curb, I searched for it first. Ripped through waterlogged bins, opened every drawer and bag we salvaged. It wasn't there. At first, I thought maybe I'd just missed it in the chaos. But as the hours passed, the hope unraveled. And I knew. They took it. Not by accident. They wouldn't have understood what it meant, but they would have known it was mine, would have seen the initials carved on the bottom, would have remembered the key I wore on a chain around my neck until the clasp broke last year. And still, they took it. Maybe it was spite, maybe greed, maybe they just didn't want me to have something she'd left just for me. My mother always said Gran was too soft with me, that she coddled me, that she didn't push me hard enough to change. But Gran never wanted me to change. She just wanted me to last. I didn't care about the furniture, the books, even the necklace. But that box held something I couldn't name. And now it was gone. I curled up on Maya's couch that night, unable to sleep. My chest felt too tight, like my connection to the one person who'd seen me fully, without judgment, had been cut. Erased like everything else they'd decided I didn't deserve to keep. The envelope was thin, cream-colored, my name written in soft, slanted cursive that stopped my heart cold. It arrived on a Thursday. Forwarded from the old address, the postmark dated 3 weeks before my grandmother died. Maya found it tucked between coupons and catalogs and handed it to me without a word. I stared at it for a long time before I opened it. Inside, a single page, faint smell of lavender, and her handwriting, careful, steady, the kind she used when she wanted her words to last. My Avery. If you're reading this, it means something has changed. Maybe something's been taken from you. Maybe you feel lost. Maybe you're questioning whether you belong anywhere at all. I want you to remember something very simple. You are not broken. You were always the one who felt too much, saw too deeply, asked too many questions. The world, and sometimes the people in it, don't know what to do with that. So they'll try to shrink you. They'll call you difficult, emotional, dramatic. They'll try to cut you down until you fit inside their version of who you should be. Don't let them. You were never meant to fit inside someone else's idea of enough. You were born to take up space. You were born to bloom, even if the soil around you turns hard. If your parents don't understand that, if they ever make you feel like you have to earn their love by being less of yourself, please know that I loved you without conditions. No edits, no shrinking. Just you, always you. With love that never dims, Gran. I read it twice. Then again. I traced the curve of her signature like it was the last real thing I had left of her. The tears came slowly, quiet this time. Not because I was hurt, but because someone had seen me. Someone had left something behind, even when everyone else took everything they could. I folded the letter and pressed it to my chest. It wasn't the box, but it was the message she'd tucked inside it, just waiting to find me another way. And somehow, she did. Healing didn't arrive with a dramatic declaration or a perfect morning. It showed up in the small, awkward steps, the kind that don't make for good stories but build something steadier than survival. I started with the practical, updated my resume, sent out applications to marketing firms that didn't have family friend in the header. Maya's friend knew someone who needed contract work, small projects, nothing glamorous but enough to start stacking rent money. I found a room in a shared apartment, cheap but clean, 3rd floor again, no elevator again, but this time it was mine. A mattress on the floor, a borrowed desk, a window with decent light. I started therapy. I didn't tell my story all at once. I let it out in fragments. How I had always felt like an accidental guest in my own family. How their silence had been louder than yelling. How I thought love was something you earned by getting smaller. My therapist said something simple that hit like a knife. You're grieving people who are still alive. She was right. But I was also grieving the version of myself who kept waiting to be chosen. So I started writing again. Not for anyone else, just for me. Late at night, curled up with tea and silence, I filled pages with anger, confusion, questions. Then eventually, clarity. Not closure, because that's not what abandonment leaves behind, but understanding. They were never going to love the real version of me, but I could. That realization felt less like a revelation and more like a slow, quiet exhale. Somewhere along the way, the pain dulled. It didn't vanish, but it stopped defining every thought, every decision. The grief was still there, but it wasn't holding the wheel anymore. And when I looked around, at the job offers starting to trickle in, at the tiny room I paid for with money I earned myself, at the friends who showed up with groceries and bad movies, I realized something that no one in that house ever wanted me to believe. I was building a life, not as an escape, not to prove anything, but because I finally understood I didn't need them to heal. It came just after midnight. Unknown number, local area code. I almost didn't answer. Thought maybe it was spam or a job recruiter who didn't understand boundaries. But something told me to pick up. Hello? Silence. Then, Avery? I hadn't heard Jamie's voice in over a year. My chest tightened. Is everything okay? A pause. Yeah, I needed to call. His voice had changed. Deeper, more uncertain, like he wasn't used to saying things he meant. I saw your name on the letter from the lawyer, he said, about the missing items, the necklace, the box. I didn't say anything. I didn't trust myself to. They still have it, he added quietly. The box. I heard Mom say it was probably worth something, but I know Gran left it for you. Of course they kept it. Of course it was about value they could measure in dollars. I'm sorry, he said, and his voice cracked. I should have said something. When they moved, I knew it wasn't right. I just didn't know what to do. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, not angry, just tired. Why didn't anyone tell me? They said you were better off, he said, that you were stuck, holding everyone back, that you'd never make something of yourself. And he trailed off. You believed them, I finished. Not completely, he whispered, but I didn't stand up for you either. There it was, the thing no one had said out loud. I waited. I wanted to, he said. I wanted to say it was wrong, but I was scared. I closed my eyes, leaning against the cold wall of my rented room. The space was quiet except for the sound of him breathing on the other end. Do you think it's too late? He asked. To fix it? To be your brother again. I didn't have an answer for that, but I didn't hang up, and maybe that was something. He stayed on the line while I sat there, silent. Two people who had grown up in the same house but never really in the same world. I found the letter Gran wrote, I said eventually. She saw all of this coming. I think she always knew you were different, he said, in the best way. And for the first time, I let that land. The new apartment wasn't big, but it was mine. White walls, secondhand furniture, a chipped mug I refused to throw away because it felt like a reminder of where I started. Every corner had something chosen, not handed down, not tolerated. Chosen. I painted the walls myself, hung curtains in a soft blue that reminded me of coastal mornings, even if my view was just the gas station across the street. I'd started a blog a few months ago. Nothing fancy, just a quiet corner of the internet where I wrote about healing, about family that leaves, about finding yourself when you're not sure who that self is anymore. It was called Quiet Exit. At first I thought no one would read it, but people did. Other women. Men, too. Strangers who had also been ghosted by the people who raised them, who had been called too much, too sensitive, too broken, until they believed it. We shared stories in the comments like we were passing pieces of a map to each other, marking the way out of grief. Sometimes I thought about expanding it into a podcast, something to speak the truths we were all too used to whispering. Last week, a padded envelope arrived at my door. No return address. Inside was the wooden box. No note, no apology. Just the box and the key, taped to the top. Whether it came through guilt or legal pressure didn't matter. It was here. I turned the key slowly, hands steady. Inside were the old photos Gran used to keep in her dresser. Me at 7, barefoot in her garden, her teaching me how to braid wildflowers into a crown, a faded recipe card in her handwriting, and at the bottom, a brooch I'd never seen before, gold filigree with a tiny opal in the center, just like the necklace. Tucked beneath it, a folded slip of paper in her familiar script. Sometimes the family you're born into isn't the one you belong to. I read it twice. Then I smiled. Later that day, I packed a small overnight bag, grabbed my keys, and hit the road. No destination in mind, just movement. In the rearview mirror, I watched the skyline blur behind me, familiar buildings shrinking until they were just memory. And ahead, nothing but open road, possibility, and the quiet certainty that this time, I was choosing me.